I'm Meredith. This is Rattled and Shook, and I'm going to tell you a bedtime story. This is a real creepy story sent in by a real person, and it might make you consider the ghost of Christmas past. I love Christmas. It's probably my second favorite holiday after Halloween, but maybe not all Christmases in history have been joyful.
George Michael died on Christmas.
No way. George Michael died on Christmas?
Yeah.
Oh. Can we play like 2 seconds for him?
Last Christmas, I gave you my heart.
That's proof that Christmas is not always great. We might keep that in. On Christmas Eve of 2019, a friend of mine and I were feeling cooped up in our houses and decided to meet in Calumet for a stroll beneath the festive lights. We lived in Upper Michigan, and the snow and cold were biting and seeping into our bones, but in our minds, it beat sitting around with our families building the third puzzle of the week. Cleo and I walked and chatted. Our thoughts were centered around boys and the drama we had heard, our teeth chattering every other word. It wasn't cool to wear full snow stuff at the time if you weren't skiing or sledding, so we just had on our jeans to keep our legs warm, and our thin jackets and hats were barely keeping the snowflakes off our necks. Yet, when we saw this open plot covered in a coat of pristine, untouched snow, it didn't take us long to leap in and start making snow angels. With our backs pressed into the fluffy snow and our laughs echoing off the street, we swished our arms and legs, creating our masterpieces. Then, suddenly, I wasn't having fun anymore. I felt anxious, panicked, scared, trapped. Now, I've always been described as an emotionally sensitive person. I'm quick to anger, I cry during a confrontation, I get horrible secondhand embarrassment, and maybe worst of all, I'm deeply empathetic. Even when I don't want to be, it's like I have no choice but to feel what the person I'm observing is feeling. For example, if someone has royally screwed me over and is profusely apologizing to my face, even if I'm upset or hurt, I can't help but feel their guilt and regret. Sometimes it's hard for me to tell which emotions are mine. So at that moment, who was I feeling? Cleo seemed perfectly fine. She was still giggling in her snow pile, her pink jacket swishing and swooshing. Then I felt something I hadn't experienced before, a physical pain in my chest. A crushing, slow pain, the kind that made my ribs ache, made it feel like they could snap at any moment. My breath hitched, and my lungs felt restricted and blocked. I bolted upright, not knowing what to do. I looked to Cleo before I just started running and tripping over my feet. I didn't know where I was going or why, but I ran to the other side of the plot, desperately seeking a way out. Out? Why do I need a way out? Why was I even thinking about a way out? There was an arch at the edge of the plot, a thin brick arch that was standing alone. I needed to go through it. I just needed to go through it. In my heart, I knew that was my out. I pushed onward, my breath still caught in my throat and my vision blackening around the edges. Cleo called from behind me as I tripped in front of the doorway. I was terrified. What the hell was my problem? I crawled through on my hands and knees as my tears clung to my face, freezing. Then, glorious, glorious air. I filled my lungs greedily as if I'd never breathe again, and instant relief washed over me. I rolled onto my back and turned my head away from the arch, finally noticing the plaque next to it. For you to understand why my heart sank in that moment, here's a little local history. In 1913, Calumet was a booming mining community. Everything was owned and operated by the Copper and Hecla Mining Company, C&H. In 1913, the Western Federation of Miners had been on strike for about 5 months. The wives of these striking miners organized a huge Christmas party at the Italian Hall, a building where there was a very steep staircase to the second floor. That's where the party was. That night, an unknown person shouted "fire," despite there not being one, and a stampede ensued. But the stairwell was so small and the crowd was so chaotic that many people were shoved to the floor and trampled. 73 people were crushed to death, 59 of them being children, the youngest of whom was 3. A majority of the deceased were Finnish, which my family proudly claims as our heritage. Christmas of 1913 was joyless, and hordes of people were in mourning. They marched 59 little coffins down that very street 4 days later on the following Sunday. The horrific event is known as the Italian Hall disaster, and there I was beyond the threshold of that same doorway 106 years later. Yet I was making snow angels. I felt horribly guilty. The hall was torn down in the 80s, but the arch and historical plaque were left to commemorate the dead. I didn't tell Cleo what I had felt. What was I supposed to say? I didn't want to be insensitive or be judged. I didn't want to disrespect the ground. We headed back to the car, Cleo doing most of the talking this time. I did take a look back at the arch and whispered a silent apology and a prayer for those souls to be at peace, if they were still around. At the time, it felt like that was the right thing to do. I'm not sure what happened or why. Maybe I picked up on some sort of echo from the past, or maybe I just had an asthma attack, which I did have every so often, but I never felt the premonition of fear, that crushing feeling before, nor have I since. The moral of this story, I think, is to pay respect to the land you tread on. May the victims of the 1913 disaster rest in peace.